And now it's time for a brief moment in hockey history with old-time hockey. Constantine Falkland Carey Smythe, better known as Conn Smythe, was a Canadian businessman, a soldier, and a sportsman in ice hockey and horse racing. He is best known as the principal owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs of the National Hockey League from 1927 to 1961, and known as the builder of Maple Leaf Gardens. As the owner of the Leafs during numerous championship years, his name appears on the Stanley Cup 8 times. As a youth, Smythe would play for the Toronto Varsity Thirds of the Ontario Hockey Association. Smythe and his teammates would win the OHA Junior Championship in 1914. This would be the end of his playing days, however, as a week after he had won the championship, him and his teammates were enlisted during the Great War. Smythe would earn a military cross for his actions during the Battle of the Somme, and would later transfer to the Royal Flying Corps in 1917, where he was an airborne observer directing artillery fire. Smythe was shot down by the Germans and captured in October of 1917, and finished the next 14 months until the war's end as a prisoner of war. Smythe would return to Toronto after the war to start a sand and gravel business. During this time, Smythe would coach for the University of Toronto and would regularly travel into the States to Boston and New York to play local colleges. This is where he got the attention of the NHL. He was hired to coach the Rangers but never coached a single game. It was in 1927 that an opportunity arose where the Toronto St. Pats were up for sale. Smith pulled together $10,000 of his own dollars and put together a group of investors to keep the St. Pats in Toronto. The sale went through, and the St. Pat's name was changed to the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs would win their first Stanley Cup in 1932, and again in 1942, which was the same year that Smythe once again went overseas to fight in the Second World War. After coming back from the war, Smythe would take out a sizable loan from a Toronto stockbroker of $300,000 and purchased Maple Leaf Gardens Limited, thus becoming the majority owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Smythe would see one of the greatest hockey dynasties ever, where Toronto won 6 Stanley Cups in 10 seasons between 1942 and 1951. After the Second World War, Smythe became heavily involved in charities and would remain so for the rest of his life. Smythe also oversaw the construction of the Hockey Hall of Fame building in 1961 and served as the hall's chairman until 1971. The National Hockey League honored Smythe's contribution to the game by introducing the Conn Smythe Trophy in 1965 to be presented to the most valuable player in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is why the Conn Smythe Memorial Trophy is in the shape of Maple Leaf Gardens with a large maple leaf behind it. And this has been a brief moment of hockey history. Meh.